Hello, my name is Briers and I'm the Rev, and I'm going to see if I can offer a spiritual response to some questions that have been sent to me today. So I use that phrase, as I've said elsewhere on the site, but I just want to state it here because this is one of the early videos. I use that phrase carefully. It's a spiritual response. I'm not saying I've got the answer, I'm not saying I'm right, but I want to offer a response to people who have genuine questions, in the hopes that what I can offer may be helpful to people out there. So the questions that I'm going to tackle today, there's a couple which feel to me like they're related. There are two that have got sent to me, one through Facebook and one by email. And the first one is, many problems in life do not have a solution. In such a case, what should a person do? If one gets frustrated or depressed because of this, then what is needed to do? And the second one is, at what stage does mental illness through a nervous breakdown become something one cannot process solely by delving fully into the abyss of your grief, and needs medicating rather than meditating upon? So the link for me is between the reference to mental illness and breakdown and depression. So I want to tackle those things first. It's easy when exploring a spiritual life to start to see spirituality and spiritual growth processes as the be-all and end-all, like the panacea, the thing that will solve all problems, cure all ills. And that's not true. In my assessment, that's not true. There is a difference between spiritual growth and development and psychological growth and development. They're different strands. They're deeply interrelated, and I believe if we're doing a really thorough job in either one of them, then probably we'll stumble across the other. But the one doesn't denote the other. And particularly around real mental illness, and depression is a recognised mental illness. Spiritual solutions may not be your best recourse, at least at first. And I guess this adjunct to that is that certainly not on their own. They may be part of the solution, but they're rarely the whole of the solution. And a kind of spiritual perspective on that, I guess, is one teacher I work with used to say the only difference between a psychic and a psychotic is stability. That the psychic can move their consciousness, can shift their level of awareness to experience another world or another reality or another level of beingness, and then stabilise themselves there and witness the world and their life and other people's lives from that place, and then come back again and stabilise themselves here in everyday reality too. Whereas a possible spiritual view on what psychosis is actually shifting between those different levels and layers of awareness and consciousness and reality, and not being able to stabilise yourself in any one place. So you mistake a kind of a perspective from one version of reality for a perspective in another version of reality, and you never know quite where you are or where the ground is underneath your feet. That you can't really find the ground underneath your feet. And of course that comes across to other people as crazy behaviour, whereas to the person experiencing it, at every moment it makes sense. But the lack of stability makes it seem crazy to someone else who is stable. So that's one perspective on psychosis or mental or emotional illness from a kind of shamanic or mystical perspective. And I think that's a really valuable way to look at things. That in order for spiritual development to take, in order for it to be a valuable path to pursue, you've got to have sufficient stability. And it may be that you need to seek psychological or psychotherapeutic help in order to get stable enough to do the spiritual work. The flip side of that is that even people who have progressed very deeply into the spiritual path, that doesn't also denote that they're psychologically balanced. Shunryu Suzuki, who's was a very wonderful Zen teacher who moved to teach in the US, a Japanese teacher. I've seen a lot of accounts that he was on a minor level a kleptomaniac. He was always stealing small things, which is, because it's a little thing and it's not that big a deal. It is kind of funny, but if you look at it in terms of his integrity, you could look at that and go, but he's supposed to be spiritually enlightened, as a Buddhist master, why is he acting that way? Well, just because he's spiritually enlightened as a Buddhist master doesn't denote that he's a perfect human being. He's still a human being. On some level, we've got to deal with ourselves and each other as human beings first, whether we're on a spiritual path or not, and allow that. Even the most enlightened of people are going to have tough times. You know, there's stories of the Buddha turning around to his followers, some of his closest followers, and saying, you know, enlightened people, for someone to come into this life already enlightened or ready to be enlightened is so rare that what's the point? Really, why should I keep working? Why should I keep trying to help people become enlightened? It's a thankless and probably hopeless mission. That's the Buddha. You know, this guy that we hold up and venerate as a wonderful example of enlightened consciousness. And he still had doubts. He still had concerns even after he became enlightened, as it's put. So I guess I want to offer that perspective that spiritual progression, however far we go, however deeply we may have studied and developed and grown and challenged ourselves, we're still human beings. And psychological development is a separate thing. So the other part of those questions that I want to address is this first thing. Many problems in life do not have a solution. In such a case, what should a person do? With the best will in the world and with real love and compassion, I want to offer a challenge that to look at the world as a thing that requires a solution, for my money, misses the point. It's easy to get into that mindset because much of our education teaches us to move towards solutions, to try and find solutions to problems. Like, that's what our education system mostly sets us up for. But the world is so much more complex and wonderful than that. There's an approach to organisational development called appreciative inquiry, and in that they have this wonderful phrase of not a solution to be solved, not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be embraced. And for me, although that doesn't come from an explicitly spiritual field of study, that's a deeply spiritual ideal. That the universe is essentially mysterious. You know, the Native American Indians, one of the words they used for God or the universe, the kind of divine principle, can be translated as great mystery. And the Tao Te Ching, the central text of Taoism, also talks a lot about embracing mystery. You know, the world we live in is deeply mysterious. As much as science and other fields of study and philosophy are constantly seeking some kind of solution or some kind of answers, and I celebrate that seeking for answers, the world is not so simple. And on the one hand, I can take a view that the world is complicated, difficult, painful because of its complexity. On the other hand, I have a choice to step into a region where I say, the world is beautifully mysterious. How wonderful that I can't work it all out. How exciting that there's so much yet to learn. How glorious that I can look out into the world and it be so vast, infinite, and wondrous that I can't even comprehend it. How marvellous. What a gift. What a gift of possibility. Like, I don't even know what's out there. How exciting. And I really recognise that that can be a tough perspective to take. And for me, it's been the richest shift I've ever made in my life, is into seeing the world as a world of possibility and mysterious wondrousness, rather than a kind of a world full of too many problems to solve. Like that, of course that's overwhelming. Of course that's overwhelming, because the world is too full of problems to solve. Yours and mine. So I just offer that as a perspective, and I hope that it helps. And as I say, to return to that, my original point, without psychological stability to take that choice, to make that choice to see the world as mysterious and wonderful, it may be borderline impossible. So if you are depressed, if you do have if you've had a breakdown, if you've got genuine issues around mental health, then get help. There are a lot of services out there really specifically designed to help you with that, whether that's psychotherapy, psychiatry. Get some help. For that matter, at least speak to some friends, get some support, because one of the best things you can do, without going into kind of very specific techniques or methodology, one of the best things you can do to create stability is to get support from friends and professionals, but get some support around you. If you want to make if you trying to balance a stick on the floor and you want to make it more stable, you put supports around it. And human beings are just the same. If someone is wobbling, then get some support around them and they'll do a lot better. So I hope that response is useful to you, those of you who have asked those questions and others who may watch this. And I offer it as ever with love.